The emergency klaxon aboard the Terran Dominion battlecruiser Apex Predator had been screaming for 3 minutes when Captain Kazimir Volkov finally silenced it. With a sharp gesture, the bridge fell into an eerie quiet, broken only by the hum of failing life support systems and the occasional spark from damaged consoles. Status report. Volkov commanded, his weathered face illuminated by the red emergency lighting. At 52, he'd survived 14 major engagements against the Hegemony Coalition, but nothing had prepared him for this. Hull integrity at 6 to 7% and falling, reported Lieutenant Commander Petra Nightingale, her fingers dancing across tactical displays that flickered with warning indicators. We've lost primary weapons, navigation is offline, and the quantum drive is, Captain, it's completely fried, whatever that weapon was. It didn't just damage us, it rewrote our fundamental understanding of physics. 3 days ago, the Apex Predator had been patrolling the neutral zone between human space and the HFY Empire when long-range sensors detected an anomaly. What appeared to be a derelict HFY dreadnought had been drifting in deep space, its massive bulk scarred by weapons fire that no known technology could have inflicted. The patterns were too precise, to surgical as if something had dissected the kilometer-long vessel with the care of a scientist examining an insect against protocol. Volkov had ordered an investigation. The Apex Predator's crew of 800 had approached cautiously, scanners probing the dead ship's hull for signs of life or salvageable technology. They'd found something far worse. The HFY weren't dead, they'd been changed. Their blue-scaled forms had been twisted into grotesque parodies of their former selves. Organic components fused with machinery of unknown origin. But it was their eyes that haunted Volkov's dreams, still conscious, still aware. Trapped within bodies that no longer belonged to them, then the trap had sprung. The derelict had come alive with weapons that defied every law of physics the Terran Scientific Consortium had ever documented. Energy beams that existed in dimensions human minds couldn't comprehend. Projectiles that arrived before they were fired. And something that can only be described as weaponized entropy itself, sir. Called Chief Navigator Enzo Meridian from his station, voice tight with confusion. I'm getting readings that this can't be right. According to our instruments, we're no longer in the Kepler sector. Hell, we're not even in the same galaxy. Volkov's blood turned to ice. Elaborate. The star patterns are all wrong. Completely wrong. And sir, Meridian's voice cracked. I'm detecting a familiar pulsar signature, the lighthouse beacon from Earth's solar system. But that's impossible, we're receiving it from the wrong direction entirely. The bridge crew exchanged horrified glances. The lighthouse beacon was a neutron star 12 light-years from Earth, converted into a navigation beacon by human engineers 50 years ago. Its unique signature was impossible to fake and served as the primary reference point for all human navigation in local space. How far? Volkov asked quietly. If I'm reading this correctly, we're at the very edge of the Sol system, approximately 1 light-year from Earth. The implications hit the crew like a physical blow. They were supposed to be 37 light-years away, deep in contested space. Whatever had attacked them hadn't just damaged their ship, it had somehow transported them across impossible distances in the span of minutes. Captain Nightingale's voice was barely a whisper. I'm detecting multiple contacts on long-range sensors. Ships, sir. Hundreds of them, all converging on our position. The main display flickered to life, showing a tactical overview that made Volkov's hands tremble. Ships of impossible design were emerging from what appeared to be tiers in space itself vessels. That hurt to look at directly, their geometry existing in too many dimensions simultaneously. They moved with predatory grace, each one easily 3 times the size of the Apex Predator. They followed us, Volkov realized with growing horror. Whatever attacked us in the neutral zone, they used us as a beacon. We've led them straight to Earth. The comm system crackled to life with an incoming transmission. The voice that emerged was human, but wrong, layered with harmonics that suggested multiple speakers existing in the same throat. Vessel of the meat spawn, it said, each word dripping with contempt. You have served your purpose admirably. Your crude quantum drives created the perfect resonance cascade, allowing us to follow your trail across the void. We are the architects of silence, and we have come to collect what is ours. The transmission cut out, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Sir, Meridian called out, his voice hollow. I'm receiving automated distress signals from the outer colonies. The enemy fleet. They're not just heading for Earth. They're systematically destroying every human settlement in a perfect spiral pattern, working their way inward. Volkov closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of 800 lives under his command and billions more hanging in the balance. When he opened them again, his expression was carved from granite. All hands, this is the captain. Battle stations. The first architect vessel to approach the crippled apex predator moved like liquid shadow through the void, its hull rippling with patterns that seemed to exist partially outside normal space-time. Captain Volkov watched it grow larger on the main display, noting how the ship's very presence caused their sensors to register impossible readings: negative mass, inverted time dilation, and energy signatures that shouldn't exist. To kilometers and closing, reported Nightingale, her voice steady despite the terror in her eyes. Sir, their approach vector doesn't match any known propulsion system. They're not moving through space, they're moving space around them. Weapons. Status, Volkov demanded. Secondary plasma batteries are online, but Captain. Nightingale hesitated. Our weapons are designed to fight conventional ships. This thing, I don't even know if our ammunition will recognize it as a valid target. The architect vessel came to a stop precisely 1,000 meters away, close enough that its alien presence pressed against the apex predator's hull like a living thing. Up close, Volkov could see that what he'd initially taken for armor plating was actually a collection of faces, thousands upon thousands of them, representing dozens of species he recognized and many he didn't. All were screaming silently in the vacuum of space. It's wearing them, whispered biomedical officer Dr. Yuki Tanaka from her station. The faces, they're not decorative, they're still alive, somehow integrated into the ship's structure. God in heaven, what are these things? The comm system activated without warning, filled with a cacophony of voices speaking in unison the stolen words of 100 conquered civilizations. Vessel designation Apex Predator. The collective voice intoned. You will prepare for boarding. Procedures. Your crew will be evaluated for integration potential. Those deemed suitable will join our chorus. The remainder will be rendered into base components for our war effort. Like hell, Volkov snarled. All batteries, target that monstrosity and fire at will. The apex predator's remaining plasma cannons erupted in brilliant azure streams, each projectile carrying enough energy to vaporize a city block. The superheated matter struck the architect vessel's hull and stopped, not deflected, not absorbed, simply ceased to exist, as if reality itself had decided the attack had never happened. Impossible, Nightingale breathed. The energy just vanished. The architect's ship's response was immediate and horrifying. Sections of its hull began to unfold like a blooming flower, revealing weapon systems that defy description. What emerged wasn't technology in any sense humans understood it was. Living architecture, organic cannons that pulse with malevolent intelligence. The first volley struck the apex predator amidships, and Volkov felt the ship scream. Not metaphorically, the very metal and ceramic composites that made up the hull began emitting sounds of agony as the architect weapons didn't just damage matter. They tortured it at the molecular level. Hull breach on decks 7 through 12. Engineering Chief Dmitry Volga's voice crackled over the comm. Captain, whatever they're using, it's converting our own armor into some kind of acid. The bulkheads they're eating themselves. On the tactical display, Volkov watched in horror as entire sections of his ship began to dissolve from within. The architect weapon didn't destroy, it corrupted, turning matter against itself in an orgy of self-destructs. Emergency evacuation of affected sections, he ordered. Seal all blast doors and prepare to jettison compromised decks if necessary. But the architects weren't finished. As the apex predator writhed in agony, the enemy vessel began extending what could only be described as tentacles kilometer long. Appendages that moved with serpentine grace through the vacuum. Each tentacle ended in a grasping claw line with structures that looked disturbingly like surgical instruments. They're trying to grapple us, Nightingale reported, her tactical displays showing the approaching appendages. If those things make contact, all available crew to the armories. Volkov commanded over the ship-wide comm. This is not a drill. We're about to be boarded by hostiles. Kill anything that doesn't look human, and if you encounter crew members acting strangely, assume they've been compromised. Show no mercy, these bastards don't deserve any. The first tentacle struck the apex predator's starboard hull, and Volkov felt the entire ship shudder as molecular drills began boring through their armor. Within seconds, the drilling sounds were replaced by something far worse, the screams of his crew as the first architect boarding pods breached the hull. Security teams to Deck 9, came the panicked voice of Security Chief Amos Grimm. "We've got... Jesus Christ! What are these things?" The internal security feeds showed Volkov's worst nightmares made manifest. The architect boarding parties weren't soldiers in any conventional sense. They were amalgamations of flesh and metal, moving shadows that absorbed everything they touched. Some bore the faces of HFY warriors. Others showed the twisted features of species Volkov had never seen before. All were screaming in harmonious agony. "They're not just converting our people," Dr. Tanaka reported, her voice tight with scientific horror. "They're collecting them. Every person they touch becomes part of their collective consciousness. While remaining individually aware, it's the perfect torture, eternal awareness with no control." The battle for the ship's corridors began in earnest as human security teams met the architect abominations in desperate firefights. Plasma rifles and particle beams lit up the darkness, but for every architect construct destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. Worse, Volkov could hear his own people's voices beginning to join the alien chorus as they were systemati. Callie captured and converted. Captain Grimm's voice was barely recognizable over the calm. "They're not trying to kill us quickly, they're hurting us, driving us towards specific collection points. This is organized. They want us alive." Volkov made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life, however long that might be. "All hands, this is the captain. Execute Protocol Omega." I repeat, Protocol Omega is now in effect across the ship. His remaining crew began implementing humanity's most desperate contingency plan. Rather than allow themselves to be captured and converted, they would destroy themselves and take as many enemies with them as possible. The apex predator prepared to die fighting. Protocol Omega transformed the apex predator from a wounded warship into a floating bomb throughout the vessel. Captain Volkov's crew began systematically overloading every system that could explode, turning their home into a weapon of mass destruction. But the architects had encountered desperate prey before. "Captain, they're adapting." Chief Engineer Volga's voice crackled through the intercom as explosions rocked the ship. "The bastards are somehow neutralizing our overloads before they can cascade. It's like they can predict our engineering solutions." On Deck 14, Security Chief Grimm and his remaining 12 men had barricaded themselves in the main armory, surrounded by the screams of their converted crewmates. The architect boarding parties had stopped their direct assault, instead sending wave after wave of twisted human voices through the sealed doors. Amos. The voice belonged to Lieutenant Torres, Grimm's closest friend, who had been taken 30 minutes ago. "Please, just open the door. The pain stops when you join us. We're still ourselves, just more. You can see through 1,000 eyes. Feel the universe in ways you never imagined." "Shut up," Grimm roared, clutching his plasma rifle so tightly his knuckles were white. "You're not Torres anymore." But even as he spoke, doubt crept into his voice. The thing speaking with Torres' voice knew things only Torres could know: childhood memories, shared experiences, the name of Grimm's daughter back on Mars. If this was some kind of recording or neural scan, it was perfect in every detail. On the bridge, Volkov watched tactical displays showing the systematic destruction of human space. The architect fleet had split into hunting packs, each one targeting a different colony world with surgical precision. They weren't just conquering, they were harvesting, stripping each world of its population before moving on to the next target. "Proxima Colony has gone dark," reported Navigator Meridian, his voice hollow. "That's 8 million people, Captain, 8 million. Europa Station is requesting immediate evacuation assistance," added Communications Officer Luna Castellanos. "They're reporting geometric distortions in space around their position. The architects aren't just approaching, they're warping reality itself to prevent escape." Dr. Tanaka looked up from her biological scanners, her face pale with horror. "Captain, I've been analyzing the converted crew members. The process isn't random, there's a pattern. They're selectively preserving specific neural pathways while rewiring others. They're not just creating slaves, they're creating perfect psychological weapons. Every converted human retains enough of their original personality to be convincing, but their loyalty has been completely rewritten." The implications were staggering. The architects weren't just body snatchers, they were creating the perfect infiltrators. How many human colonies would open their doors to rescue ships crewed by people they trusted, only to discover too late that their saviors had become their executioners? "Sir," Nightingale called out, her tactical display flickering. "With new contacts, I'm detecting massive gravitational distortions throughout the solar system. The architects aren't just attacking our colonies, they're repositioning the larger asteroids and minor planets. It looks like they're building something. The main display shifted to show a three-dimensional map of the solar system, overlaid with predicted orbital paths. Volkov's blood turned to ice as he realized what he was seeing. The architects were moving celestial bodies into a precise geometric pattern, using gravity itself as a construction tool. They're building a cage, he whispered, around Earth. The pattern was becoming clear, a massive geometric construct using planets and asteroids as anchor points. Once complete, it would trap Earth in a gravitational prison, making escape impossible for any ship attempting to flee the planet's surface. How long? Volkov demanded. Meridian's fingers flew over his calculations. At current rates of orbital manipulation, 6 hours, 17 minutes. After that, nothing gets in or out of Earth's gravity well without their permission. A new voice joined their communications. Admiral Rebecca Ironreich, commander of Earth's Home Defense Fleet. Her transmission was fragmenting, filled with static and the sounds of battle. Apex Predator, this is Fleet Command. We're tracking your position and the enemy vessel surrounding you. Be advised, we're mobilizing every available ship for a rescue attempt. Negative, Fleet Command. Volkov replied grimly, do not approach our position. We're compromised. The enemy has converted portions of our crew and is using us as a transmission relay. Any ship that comes within range will be subjected to psychological warfare using the voices of people you trust. Captain, we can't just leave you. That's an order, Admiral. Volkov's voice carried the authority of a man who had commanded respect for 3 decades. The enemy wants you to come for us. We're bait in a trap designed to capture your entire fleet. Focus on the civilian evacuation. Get as many people off-world as possible before they complete their gravitational cage. The transmission cut out, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Volkov could see the conflict in his officers' faces. They all knew they were likely doomed. But the captain's assessment was correct. The Apex Predator had become a liability to human space. Captain, Dr. Tanaka spoke quietly. I've been monitoring the converted crew members' biometrics. The integration process appears to be progressive. The longer someone remains converted, the less of their original personality survives. Within approximately 4 hours, they'll be completely subsumed into the Architect Collective. How many of our people are still fighting? Volkov asked. 43 confirmed uncompromised crew. Members scattered throughout the ship, Grim reported from the armory. But we're losing ground. The converted crew know all our tactical protocols, all our defensive positions. They're using our own training against us. Volkov made his decision. All remaining crew, this is the captain. New orders. We're not trying to save the ship anymore. We're going to ram the nearest Architect vessel and detonate our quantum cores manually. If we're going to die, we're taking as many of these bastards with us as possible. But even as he spoke, Volkov realized the horrible truth. The architects had been one step ahead from the beginning. They'd wanted him to come to this decision. The Apex Predator's quantum cores weren't just power sources, they were dimensional gateways, capable of tearing holes in space-time itself by detonating them near Earth. He wouldn't just destroy one enemy's ship. He'd create a dimensional rift that would give the architects direct access to humanity's homeworld. Bypassing every defense they'd carefully constructed over decades, the trap was perfect, and they were already caught in it. The realization hit Captain Volkov like a physical blow. The architects hadn't just captured his ship, they turned it into the perfect weapon against humanity itself. But in that moment of despair, a new voice cut through the communication static. Apex Predator, this is Commander Silas Ravencroft of the Stealth Frigate Ghost Protocol. We've been shadowing your position for the past hour. Captain, we need to talk. Volkov's eyes widened. The Ghost Protocol was a prototype vessel equipped with experimental cloaking technology, designed to operate behind enemy lines. If Ravencroft had managed to approach undetected, it meant the architects weren't as omniscient as they appeared. Ravencroft, you magnificent bastard, Volkov breathed. How are you here? Long story short, we were conducting deep reconnaissance when your ship appeared on sensors. Captain, I've been monitoring architect communications, and I have information you need to hear. The conversion process is not permanent. Dr. Tanaka's head snapped up from her console. Explain. The neural pathways they're rewriting require constant reinforcement from their central hub ship. It's that massive construct hanging back behind their main fleet, the one that looks like a writhing mass of tentacles and screaming faces. If we can disrupt its signal, every converted individual across their entire fleet will revert to their original state. For how long? Volkov demanded, unknown. But our analysis suggests at least 48 hours, long enough to mount a counterattack. If we can coordinate with Fleet Command, hope flickered in Volkov's chest. But he forced himself to think tactically. What's the catch? There's always a catch. The hub ship is protected by the entire Architect fleet and something they call a reality anchor, a device that makes conventional weapons useless within its area of effect. But Captain, your ship's quantum cores aren't conventional. They operate on principles that exist outside normal space-time. Volkov saw where this was leading. You want us to ram the hub ship with our cores set to overload, not ram. Captain, phase shift. The Apex Predator's quantum drives are damaged, but they're not dead. If we can synchronize your dimensional resonance with my ship's stealth field, we can slip through their reality anchor and appear directly inside their command structure. And then, Nightingale asked, though her tactical mind had already worked out the answer, then we detonate everything at once and hope the dimensional cascade is powerful enough to sever their control network permanently. The plan was insane, desperate, and likely suicidal. It was also the only chance humanity had. Do it, Volkov ordered. All hands, prepare for emergency phase shift. Ravencroft, transmit your synchronization frequencies. What followed was 20 minutes of the most dangerous engineering work any human had ever attempted. The Apex Predator's damaged quantum cores had to be precisely calibrated to match the Ghost Protocol's stealth harmonics while simultaneously preparing for catastrophic overload. One miscalculation would tear both ships apart at the molecular level. Throughout the ship, the converted crew members began reacting to something their human captors couldn't detect. Their anguished chorus grew louder, more urgent, as if they sensed what was coming. They know, Dr. Tanaka reported. The collective consciousness is aware of our plan. Captain, they're trying to accelerate the conversion process. My readings show massive neural activity spikes in all compromised crew members. In the armory, Security Chief Grimm watched in horror as the barricaded doors began to bulge inward. But it wasn't from external pressure. The converted crew members were somehow increasing their physical strength, their bodies reshaping themselves for maximum destructive potential. They're changing, he reported over the comm, not just mentally anymore, physically. Torres is. God help me, he's becoming something else entirely. The voice that had once belonged to Lieutenant Torres now carried harmonics that hurt to hear. Amos, you cannot hide from evolution. Your captain's plan will fail because he does not understand what we have become. We are not conquered, we are elevated. Engineering a bridge, came Chief Volga's strained voice. Quantum resonance at 87% and rising. But Captain, the cores are destabilizing faster than we calculated. We'll have maybe 90 seconds once we phase shift, before everything comes apart. Understood. Ravencroft, are your people ready? Ghost Protocol is standing by. Captain, once we begin the phase shift, there's no going back. The dimensional stress will tear apart both our ships within minutes. Volkov looked around his bridge one last time, at officers who had served with him through years of war and exploration. They all knew this was a one-way mission, but not one face showed fear, only grim determination. Execute, he commanded, reality twisted. The sensation of phase shifting through damaged quantum cores while inside an alien reality anchor was indescribable. Volkov felt his consciousness stretched across multiple dimensions simultaneously, experiencing his death and birth in the same instant while watching the universe unfold and collapse around him. Then they were inside the Architect hub ship, and hell itself seemed inadequate to describe what they found. The interior wasn't a ship in any conventional sense, it was a living cathedral of suffering. The walls pulsed with circulatory systems carrying the liquefied remains of countless civilizations. The ceiling was a vast neural network composed of interconnected brains from 100 species, all twitching in synchronized agony, and at the center, suspended in a web of organic cables, hung something that might once have been the collective consciousness of an entire species. Jesus Christ, whispered Ravencroft over the comm. What did these things do to themselves? The answer came from the entity at the chamber's heart, a voice that was somehow familiar. Despite its alien harmonics, we chose transcendence, it said, and Volkov realized with mounting horror that he was listening to the original architects themselves. They hadn't conquered other species, they'd been the first victims of their own twisted evolution, transformed into the very weapons that now threatened humanity. We were like you once. The entity continued, curious, ambitious, afraid, but fear led to enhancement. Enhancement led to integration. Integration led to perfection. Your version of perfection is an abomination, Volkov snarled, his finger hovering over the quantum core detonation switch. Yes, came the unexpected reply, but we cannot stop. The hunger grows. The collective demands feeding. Help us for one terrible moment. Volkov hesitated. Then the screams of his converted crew echoed through the ship's corridors, and his mercy died. Go to hell, he said, and activated the detonation sequence. The quantum cores of both ships detonated simultaneously, creating a dimensional cascade that tore through the Architect hub ship like cosmic lightning. But instead of instant annihilation, the explosion triggered something far more catastrophic. It freed the imprisoned consciousness of every species the Architects had ever consumed. Captain Volkov found himself suspended in a maelstrom of liberated minds, each one screaming for vengeance against their captors. HFY warriors, Centaurian scholars, vegan merchants, and dozens of other species all retained their individual consciousness within the collective, all burning with centuries of accumulated rage. What have you done? The original Architect entity wailed as its control network began collapsing. The barriers are failing. We cannot contain them across space. Every Architect vessel in the invasion fleet began convulsing as their converted crews suddenly regained their free will. But they retained their enhanced abilities. Their hybrid nature now turned against their former masters. The liberation was spreading like a virus through the quantum communication network. Aboard the dying apex predator, Security Chief Grimm watched in amazement as Lieutenant Torres crashed through the armory doors, but instead of attacking, Torres turned his enhanced strength against the Architect boarding parties that had been pursuing him. Grimm, Torres shouted, his voice carrying new harmonics but undeniably human. We're free. The bastard's control is breaking down, but we've only got minutes before the ship tears itself apart. How many? Grimm demanded, checking his weapon. 47 liberated crews scattered throughout the ship, plus unknown numbers of converted aliens who are now fighting their former masters, but Chief was stuck in these bodies. The integration can't be reversed. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Every converted crew member was now a hybrid being, enhanced beyond human limits, but forever changed. They were no longer entirely human, but they were free. Meanwhile, in Earth's solar system, Admiral Ironright watched her tactical displays with growing amazement and horror. The Architect fleet was tearing itself apart from within as liberated. Mind seized control of individual vessels and turned their weapons against their former captors. Admiral, reported her tactical officer, were receiving transmissions from the enemy fleet, but they're in human languages, HFY dialect, and at least a dozen other known species. This is Commander Yuki Sato of the converted vessel Flesh. Cathedral, came a transmission that made Ironright's blood run cold. The voice was human but carried otherworldly harmonics. I was the captain of the transport ship Mercy's Hand before our capture 6 months ago. My crew and I have retaken control of this vessel and are requesting permission to join your fleet. Commander Sato, this is Admiral Ironright. How do we know you're really human? Because, Admiral, I know that you keep a picture of your daughter, Melissa, in your command console, and that you blame yourself for not being there when she graduated from the Naval Academy. I know because Captain Torres told me during our imprisonment we maintained a communication network. The Architects never detected. The verification was perfect, but Ironright still hesitated. Your vessel shows massive biological modifications. Are you still human? We're what humanity becomes when it refuses to surrender, Sato replied grimly. Admiral, we've got approximately 30 minutes before the Architect fleet regains control of their network. If we're going to strike, it has to be now. The battle for Earth's solar system erupted with unprecedented ferocity. Liberated vessels, their crews now hybrid beings with enhanced capabilities, engaged in desperate combat against ships still under Architect control. The space around Jupiter became a charnel house as vessels tore each other apart with weapons that rewrote the laws of physics. The converted humans fought with terrifying efficiency, their enhanced bodies allowing them to survive forces that would liquefy baseline humans. But they paid a terrible price. Each use of their abilities burned away more of their original humanity, pushing them further into alien territory. Ironright to all liberated vessels, the Admiral broadcast, coordinate your attacks on the reality anchors. If we can collapse their dimensional manipulation, our conventional weapons will become effective again. What followed was a ballet of destruction as hybrid crews sacrificed their ships in kamikaze runs. Against architect anchor points, the Flesh Cathedral died first. Commander Sato's final transmission, a battle cry in 17 different languages. As her vessel punched through 3 reality anchors before detonating its core, the Broken Paradise, crewed by liberated HFY and human hybrids, followed suit. Its captain, a being who had once been Captain Morrison of the colony's ship New Hope, singing an ancient Earth song. As his vessel carved through architect defenses, "We're winning," Ironwright realized with amazement and horror. But God help us, the cost. Each victory came at the price of allies who were no longer quite human, no longer quite alien, but something entirely new. They were humanity's children, transformed by suffering into weapons of vengeance. On the dying apex predator, Captain Volkov felt the ship's death throes accelerating. The quantum cascade had accomplished its mission. The architect control network was collapsing, but both ships were being torn apart by dimensional forces beyond their design tolerances. Captain Torres reported, his enhanced senses detecting things normal humans couldn't perceive. The hub ship is trying to escape into dimensional fold space. If it gets away, it can rebuild the network. Not happening, Volkov snarled. He turned to his remaining crew, 23 baseline humans and 18 liberated hybrids. Anyone who wants to evacuate to Ravencroft's ship, go now. What we're about to do will kill everyone who stays. Not one person moved. Then let's finish this, Volkov said, and activated the Apex Predator's emergency protocols. Instead of trying to escape the dimensional cascade, he embraced it, using the ship's destruction to create a gravitational anchor that would drag the architect hub ship into normal space. The gambit worked. As the Apex Predator died, it pulled the rattling mass of the architect hub ship back into reality, where Earth's defense fleet was waiting with every weapon they possessed. All ships, all weapons. Fire everything, Ironwright commanded. The combined firepower of 60 warships, orbital defense platforms, and converted architect vessels focused on a single target. The hub ship died screaming, its destruction sending psychic shockwaves through space that could be felt by every sensitive mind within a light year. But victory came at a cost that would haunt humanity forever. Of the 800 crew members aboard the Apex Predator, only 41 survived, and 18 of them were no longer entirely human. The battle was won, but the war for humanity's soul had only just begun. The destruction of the architect hub ship sent ripples through dimensional space that reached every corner of the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, enslaved populations suddenly found their neural shackles failing as the control network collapsed. But freedom came with a terrible revelation: the architects hadn't been the original enemy. Captain Volkov, dying in the wreckage of his bridge, watched through failing sensors as something vast stirred in the space beyond Pluto's orbit. The dimensional cascade had done more than destroy the architect control system. It had sent a signal into the deep void, announcing humanity's location to the entities that had created the architects in the first place. Captain Torres knelt beside Volkov's command chair, his enhanced form allowing him to survive in the depressurized bridge. Long-range sensors are detecting massive gravitational distortions at the edge of the solar system. Whatever's coming, it's big enough to have its own event horizon. Volkov coughed, tasting blood. How long? 8 hours, maybe less. Admiral Ironwright is coordinating the evacuation of Earth. But sir, Torres' voice cracked, there are 6 billion people down there. We can't save them all. Through his fading consciousness, Volkov heard Admiral Ironwright's voice on the emergency channels, desperately trying to organize humanity's final exodus. Every ship capable of carrying passengers was being loaded beyond capacity, but simple mathematics made the situation clear. They could save perhaps 10 billion people. Before the unknown entities arrived, Captain came Commander Ravencroft's voice over the comm. The Ghost Protocol is still functional. We can evacuate your survivors. Negative, Volkov whispered, then forced his voice stronger. The hybrid crew members, they're detecting something the rest of us can't. Torres, tell him. Torres nodded grimly. Commander, our enhanced senses are picking up quantum resonances from the approaching entities. They're not just ships, they're living beings, possibly the size of small moons, and they're hungry. Dr. Tanaka, somehow still alive in the ruins of her medical bay, added her analysis. Captain, I've been studying the liberated architect consciousness fragments. These entities, they call them the Devourers, don't just consume matter. They consume the concept of existence itself. Reality literally ceases to exist in their presence. The implications were staggering. Conventional evacuation was meaningless if the Devourers could simply erase fleeing ships from existence. But as Volkov felt his life ebbing away, Torres suddenly straightened, his hybrid senses detecting something new. "Captain, the other liberated ships, they're not running. They're forming up in a defensive formation around Earth. But sir, there's something else. The quantum cascade from our cores is still active. It's creating a dimensional anchor. That's preventing the Devourers from simply erasing our solar system." Through the static-filled communications, they could hear the voices of hybrid captains coordinating humanity's last stand. Commander Sada was gone, but her first officer, a being who had once been Lieutenant Rebecca Thorne, had survived aboard the partially functional Flesh Cathedral. "All ships. This is Acting Captain Thorne. We've analyzed the approaching entities, and I have good news and bad news. The bad news is that conventional weapons are useless against them. They exist in too many dimensions simultaneously. The good news is that we hybrids might actually be able to hurt them." "Explain, Admiral," Ironwright demanded. "The integration process didn't just change our bodies, it changed how we interface with reality itself. We're partially existing in the same dimensional space as the Devourers. If we can coordinate our efforts, we might be able to create a quantum resonance cascade that will force them back into their own dimension." "At what cost?" Ironwright asked, though she already suspected the answer. "Total. Every hybrid ship, every converted crew member, every being that was changed by the architects, we all have to burn ourselves out simultaneously. We become living bombs targeting the Devourer's dimensional anchor points." Volkov smiled. Weakly, even dying, he could appreciate the brutal mathematics of it. Humanity's greatest tragedy. The conversion of their people into hybrid beings might be their salvation. "Do it," he whispered. "Captain, you're barely conscious. Do it." Volkov repeated with the last of his strength. "That's an order. Save our species." Torres stood, his enhanced form towering over the dying captain. "Sir, it's been an honor serving under you." "The honor was mine," Volkov replied, then closed his eyes for the final time. Across the solar system, 18 hybrid ships began their final approach toward the emerging Devourers. Each vessel carried crews that had been human hours before, transformed by alien science into beings capable of surviving in multiple dimensions simultaneously. They were humanity's children, but they were no longer entirely human. The first Devourer broke through the dimensional barrier at the edge of the solar system, and reality itself began to unravel around it. The entity was impossible to describe, a living absence that consumed light, matter, time, and space with equal hunger. Where it passed, stars simply ceased to have ever existed. "Target acquired," reported Captain Thorne, her voice carrying harmonics that existed in frequencies human ears couldn't detect. "All hybrid vessels begin dimensional synchronization. We go together or not at all." The Flesh Cathedral, broken, Paradise, Screaming Light, and 15 other converted ships dove directly at the first Devourer, their crews burning their life forces to create quantum resonance weapons that could affect beings existing in 11 dimensions simultaneously. The collision was visible from Earth as a new star blooming in the darkness. The first Devourer screamed, a sound that existed across multiple dimensions and drove every psychic-sensitive human on Earth to their knees. But it wasn't enough. The entity was wounded but not destroyed. "Second wave, go," Thorne commanded, even as her ship began dissolving around her. 6 more hybrid vessels dove into the dimensional maelstrom, their crews singing battle hymns in languages that had never existed before their transformation. The second Devourer emerged, larger than the first, its presence causing spatial distortions that made Jupiter's moons briefly exist in 17 different locations simultaneously. But the hybrid crews had learned from the first attack, coordinating their quantum signatures to create interference patterns that disrupted the entity's multi-dimensional anchor points. "It's working," Admiral Ironwright reported from her command ship. "The second entity is destabilizing, but there are more coming through." The third, fourth, and fifth Devourers emerged in rapid succession, each one larger and more terrible than the last. The hybrid ships threw themselves into the battle with desperate fury, knowing that each attack was a one-way trip into oblivion. Chief Engineer Volga, his body transformed by architect technology, but his loyalty unchanged, commanded the converted mining ship Deep Harvest in a kamikaze run against the third Devourer. His final transmission was a string of Russian profanity that somehow translated into 17 different alien languages. Simultaneously, Security Chief Grimm, aboard the hybrid frigate Last Resort, led the attack on the fourth entity. His enhanced tactical mind coordinated the strikes of 6 other vessels, creating a quantum resonance pattern that forced the Devourer to partially phase back into its home dimension. "Admiral," came Dr. Tanaka's voice from her position aboard the medical ship Mercy's Burden. "I'm detecting something. The quantum cascade from the apex predator's destruction is not just anchoring our dimension. It's creating a beacon. Something's responding to it." "What kind of something?" Ironright demanded. I think it's the other species the architects conquered. The cascade is reaching across space and time, calling to every enslaved population in the galaxy. "Admiral, we're not fighting alone anymore." Across the void, ships of a dozen different species began emerging from fold space, their crews liberated by the quantum cascade's expanding wave. HFY dreadnoughts, Centaurian science vessels, vacant defense platforms, all converging on Earth's solar system for humanity's last stand. But the cost was becoming clear. Of the 47 hybrid crew members from the apex predator, only 3 remained alive. The converted human ships were being systematically destroyed, their crews burning themselves out to wound entities that existed beyond conventional physics. "Admiral," Torres reported from the Dying Ghost protocol, his voice fading as his hybrid enhancements finally overwhelmed his human physiology. "The 6th Devourer is emerging. It's, God help us, it's the size of a small planet. I don't think we can stop this one." The 6th Devourer emerged from the dimensional rift like a living nightmare, its presence causing reality to stutter and skip like a damaged recording. Where it moved, cause and effect broke down, creating temporal paradoxes that made past and future exist simultaneously. It was then that humanity's true nature revealed itself, not in the desperate heroism of the hybrid crews, but in the cold calculation of the surviving baseline humans, all civilian ships. "This is Admiral Ironright. Prepare for emergency fold space jump. We're abandoning the solar system." "Admiral," belay that order, came a new voice, Commander Ravencroft, somehow still alive aboard the damaged Ghost protocol. "I have a better idea, but you're not going to like it." The plan Ravencroft proposed was so audacious, so completely insane, that it could only have come from a human mind pushed beyond all rational limits. Using the dimensional anchor created by the apex predator's destruction, they would collapse the entire solar system into a quantum singularity, trapping the Devourers in a prison of compressed space. "Time. You're talking about deliberately creating a black hole in our home system," Ironright said flatly. "Not a black hole, Admiral. Something worse. A dimensional implosion that will create a pocket universe with the Devourers trapped inside. The quantum mathematics work out barely, but it requires every remaining ship in the system to overload their cores simultaneously while targeting the dimensional anchor points, and Earth, gone, along with Mars, Jupiter, and everything else in the system. But the colonies beyond Pluto survive, and the Devourers are contained forever." The silence that followed was broken by Torres, his voice barely a whisper as his hybrid physiology finally began shutting down. "Captain Volkov would approve. Save the species, not the world." Admiral Ironright closed her eyes, feeling the weight of 6 billion lives in her decision around her. The bridge crew waited for orders that would define humanity's future. "All ships," she finally commanded, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was ordering. "Prepare for coordinated core overload. We're going to collapse the system." But as the countdown began, something unexpected happened. The alien ships that had answered the quantum cascade's call began moving into position, not to escape, but to assist. The HFY dreadnought Vengeance of Sorrow took point, its captain transmitting in heavily accented standard. "Human Admiral, we who were enslaved remember, your species freed us all. We will not abandon you to face this alone." One by one, ships of a dozen species added their voices to humanity's funeral pyre. They would die with Earth, but they would ensure the Devourers died with them. The 6th Devourer, sensing the trap being prepared, began accelerating toward Earth. Reality warped around it. Time flowed backward in spirals, and the very concept of existence became negotiable. But it was too late. The dimensional anchor points were locked, the quantum mathematics irreversible. 10 seconds to detonation, Ironright announced. "It's been an honor serving with you all." Torres, with his final breath, managed one last transmission. Tell the survivors, we remembered how to be human. The implosion of Earth's solar system created a dimensional paradox that would be studied by xenobiologists for centuries. Where once the sun had burned, now existed a sphere of crystallized space-time, a prison that existed in 11 dimensions, simultaneously containing entities that had devoured galaxies. From the observation deck of the colony's ship New Horizon, Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the light show that marked the end of humanity's birth world. She was one of the 10 million who had escaped before the final battle, evacuated to the outer colonies in the desperate hours before the Devourer's arrival. Status report, she requested from the ship's AI, her voice hollow with loss. Dimensional. Implosion successful. 6 Devourer entities confirmed contained within the crystallized space-time matrix. No dimensional breach detected. The prison appears stable. And the cost? Total, Earth, Mars, Jupiter system, and all inner planets destroyed. Casualties, 6 billion civilian population, plus all military personnel who participated in the final battle. Confirmed survivors, 9.7 million humans across 14 outer colonies, nearly the entire human race dead in a single day. But they had taken their enemies with them, and more importantly, they had freed every enslaved species in the galaxy. Dr. Vasquez, came a familiar voice behind her. She turned to see Commander Sarah Brightwater, one of the few military officers who had survived by being assigned to evacuation duties. In her hands, she carried a small device, a quantum transmitter. What is it, Commander? A message from the crystallized zone. We're still receiving transmissions. The device crackled to life, and Dr. Vasquez gasped as she recognized the voice. It was Captain Volkov, speaking from beyond death itself. If you're hearing this, his voice said, distorted by dimensional interference, but undeniably human. Then the implosion worked. We're trapped in here with the Devourers, all of us human, Ketvari, Centaurian, everyone who died in the final battle. But here's the thing about dimensional prisons, they work both ways. The transmission continued, explaining what the surviving humans were only beginning to understand. The crystallized spacetime wasn't just a prison, it was a fortress. Every consciousness trapped within existed in a state of quantum superposition, neither alive nor dead, capable of monitoring and defending against any attempt to release the Devourers. Where the guards now, Volkov's voice explained, every human who died in the battle, every alien who answered our call for help, were all here, conscious, aware, and absolutely determined that these bastards never get free. Consider it humanity's final gift to the galaxy. Dr. Vasquez wiped tears from her eyes. Even in death, humans had found a way to be stubborn. Over the following months, the surviving human colonies received visitors from across the galaxy. Species that had been enslaved for millennia arrived to pay their respects to the race that had freed them all. The Ketvari Confederation declared humanity the liberation species and established shrines on every world. The Centaurian Republic renamed their highest military honor the Volkov Cross. But perhaps the most significant development came from an unexpected source. The hybrid humans, who had somehow survived the final battle, 3 individuals whose enhanced physiology had allowed them to exist partially outside normal spacetime, reported that they could communicate with the consciousness trapped in the crystallized zone. Lieutenant Torres, his body barely holding together after his transformation, served as the primary liaison between the living and the dead. Through him, the trapped consciousness of humanity's heroes provided strategic intelligence about other Devourer fleets in distant galaxies, technological innovations derived from studying their prison, and most importantly, tactical advice for any future encounters with reality-devouring entities. They want you to know, Torres reported during one of his communication sessions, that this isn't over. The Devourers exist across multiple universes, and our victory here has marked humanity as a primary threat. They'll send more. Eventually, Dr. Vasquez, now serving as the de facto leader of the human survivors, nodded grimly. What do our people in the crystal recommend? Prepare, expand, and never, ever forget that we're the species that looked at gods and decided to kill them. The evacuation colonies began their transformation into fortress worlds, using technology reverse-engineered from captured architect vessels and enhanced by advice from the dead. Humanity's survivors might number less than 10 million, but they carried within them the legacy of a species that had faced extinction. and chosen to take their enemies down with them. Years passed. The human colonies grew stronger, their populations slowly recovering through carefully managed breeding programs and immigration from liberated species who chose to join humanity's cause. The crystallized zone remained stable, its imprisoned consciousness serving as both guardian and advisor to the living. On the 10th anniversary of Earth's destruction, Dr. Vasquez stood before a memorial wall listing the names of every human who had died in the final battle. At the top, carved in letters that seemed to glow with their own inner light, was the inscription, Captain Kazimir Volkov and the crew of the Apex Predator, who taught the universe that humans do not go quietly. As she read the names, Torres approached, his hybrid form now stable after a decade of careful medical treatment. "They're asking me to tell you something," he said quietly. "What? That death isn't the end for humans. It's just another battlefield, and they're winning." In the depths of the crystallized zone, Captain Volkov opened eyes that existed in 11 dimensions simultaneously and smiled. Around him, the consciousness of 6 billion humans and their alien allies maintained eternal vigil over creatures that had once devoured galaxies. The devourers raged against their prison, but they had made one critical error in their cosmic arrogance. They had underestimated a species that had looked at impossible odds and decided that spite was more important than survival. Humanity was dead. Long live humanity. In the depths of space, other devourer fleets detected the quantum signature of their imprisoned brethren and began plotting revenge against the species that had dared to cage gods. But they would discover, as their predecessors had, that humans possessed one quality that made them uniquely dangerous in a universe full of predators. When cornered, humans didn't just fight back, they made sure their enemies regretted ever being born. The war for reality itself was just beginning, and humanity living and dead was ready. Epilogue. With 50 years after the Battle of Seoul, Ambassador Elena Vasquez Chen stood before the Galactic Council, her hair silver with age, but her eyes still burning with the fire that had carried humanity through its darkest hour. Before her sat representatives of 200 species, all united by a single shared experience: liberation from the Architect Collective. "The motion before us today," she announced, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast assembly hall, "is the establishment of the Terran Protocol, a galaxy-wide defense network based on the principles demonstrated by humanity during the Devourer crisis." A ripple of approval passed through the assembled delegates. The Terran Protocol was simple in concept, but revolutionary in execution. Any species facing extinction-level threats would have access to the combined military resources of the entire galaxy, coordinated by the consciousness trapped in the Soul System crystal. "Some have asked," Vasquez Chen continued, "whether it's wise to base our defense strategies on the advice of the dead. To them, I say, the dead have a unique perspective on survival. They know exactly what we're fighting to preserve." Through the quantum communicator at her side, she heard Captain Volkov's laughter echo across dimensions. Even in death, the old captain found humanity's situation amusing. "We are a species," she concluded, "that learned to weaponize our own extinction. Let that be our gift to the galaxy, the knowledge that no matter how powerful the enemy, no matter how hopeless the odds, there is always one more option available to those willing to pay the ultimate price." The vote was unanimous. Humanity had died saving the galaxy. In return, the galaxy would make sure humanity's legacy lived forever. In the crystallized zone, 6 billion human consciousness and their alien allies stood guard over gods in chains, proving that sometimes the greatest victory comes not from living to see another day, but from making sure your enemies don't either. The universe had learned a new truth. Humans don't just go extinct. They go extinct on their own terms.